la famille.
Okay, so welcome to the family, everyone. Happy Easter for those that it concerns. Happy Monday for the rest. I'm more than happy to welcome Mathieu, the co-founder and CPO of OpenClassrooms. I'm sure that's why you guys all came here today. So without further ado, we're going to kick off this conversation. Just to give you guys the pace for today, we're going to be talking about Mathieu, his professional, private life. No, I'm joking. But mostly about the future of education, what he's learned and what he envisions for the rest of us in the next decades to come. So Mathieu, can you tell us a little bit about how OpenClassrooms started? So for us at the family, we see a lot about startup creation, and I think this is one of the coolest stories that I've heard. So you launched Le Site du Zéro, I think, in 1999. That's correct. Can you tell us a bit about what happened since 1999?
Hi, everyone. Pleased to meet you. So my story is quite a long one because I started almost 20 years ago. At the end of this year, it's going to be 20 years anniversary of the project. And if you want the short version, maybe for your first question, what happened since 1999? Well, it first started as a pet project, side project. I was a student when I was 13 years old. I was trying to learn how to make a website, because why not? And I went to the bookstore, tried to find a book for a beginner like me, and I was disappointed because I couldn't find any book for a beginner like me. So out of frustration, I decided to, buy one of these books anyway and learn through this book, even if this book was for professionals and I wasn't a professional. And, I felt even more frustrated when I read the book because it was more complicated than it should have been. So I decided to rewrite the book the way I would have wanted to learn. So I became a bit schizophrenic and I explained to my old self, Mathieu, here is what you need to know. So let's start with this thing. And it's going to make not so much sense at the beginning, but we'll see it later, don't worry, etc. So I was basically speaking to myself. And as it turned out, it helped my 2 or 3 friends at the time who wanted to learn how to make a website. And by word of mouth, they talked to their friends, and I worked almost every day since then on the website in parallel of my studies. I went to high school then I went to an engineering school in Paris, and at the same time I had my website, just personal project, not a company. And one day, almost at the end of my studies, almost at my master's degree, I was in an internship, and I was spending more than 50% of my time on my website and not on my internship. So it was a wake-up call. I told myself, I cannot continue like that. I have to make a choice. Either I drop everything, or I go all in. But I'm pissed doing everything at the same time. I had been doing that for like 8 years. From 1999 to 2007, it was a personal project. In 2007, because of this internship that was not an internship in reality, I decided to create a company with another co-founder who was helping me, Pierre Dubuc. He had been helping me on the website for many years. And it became a company in 2007. We finished our studies in 2008, 2009, and then we started to hire our first employees, first developers, actually, in 2009. Then we had many business models. I won't enter into the details right now. And grew and, decreased, and then it grew, and then it decreased, and then it grew, and then it decreased. We had several business models. Last one seems to be a great one. Almost 1 year ago, we raised $60 million from American investors. It was the biggest fundraising in Europe this year, and one of the biggest fundraisings in France, or every company type. Now we are 170 people in the company. We are based in Paris, mostly. Now we have small offices in New York and London. We have 3 million learners every month coming to the website, 3 million people. from 120 countries in French and English. And basically, we have become an online school because we have fully recognized diploma, fully online. And people get bachelor's or master's degree, and we help them to find a job in the digital economy.
Perfect. Great. Super impressive, by the way. So I just want to get a better sense for the room. Who here is an entrepreneur? Raise your hand. Okay, great. So coming to learn from the master. So that's why I want to ask my next question. So you mentioned that you worked on OpenClassrooms or Le Site du Zéro as a personal project for a long time, and suddenly you decided to turn it into a company. At the time, there was probably not as much information and content around what that meant. Can you explain what shifted in terms of mindset or what changed in the way that you worked in order to go from a personal project to a company, aside from the time that you were allocating to building it? Did something change in your head in the way that you built it?
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you put this into perspective, in 2007, when I decided with Pierre to create a company, it was, well, creating a startup was not the new cool thing. Nobody heard about startup, almost. So, for instance, at my school, I told them I would like to do the final project, the final internship, actually, 6 months internship at my own company. And they told me, you cannot do that. You cannot be an intern at your own company. I said, yeah, but I'm not going to be an intern at another company while I'm trying to build my company. So, you know, it was pretty new in 2007. So we found a way to make it work, but it wasn't, they didn't have any entrepreneurship path for people who wanted to create a company. So it was a long time ago. And when I told my parents I was going to create a company, it was a bit surprising for them because, well, it was like I told my parents I'm going to be a troubadour, or, you know, and they were like, well, okay, if that's what you want to do, son, we'll support you. But it was still not the thing, you know, to do. And so, yeah, it was a very different time. So we had less resources for sure, much less investment, much less investors, no space like this one. It didn't exist as far as I know. So it was, 12 years ago. And yeah, so very different time. And when I started, well, the new thing was, oh my God, I have to find money to pay the bills. So it was a money problem, I would say. The new thing was, how am I going to pay the interns next month? Something like that. And then how am I going to pay the employees next month? And, well, it's been 12 years, and I'm still having this question. Am I going to pay the employees next month, or in 6 months, or in 12 months? But it never stops. You are always a bit afraid of what's coming next, because you have a duty to these people. So what changed, I guess, is this. We didn't get much more money out of creating a company. We just put €1,000 each one. And we had no investors, and we didn't try to look for investors because we didn't know it existed at the time. So it was something. And
there probably weren't many around at that point either.
Yeah, they existed, but investors in startups wasn't a thing. So we just continued. Actually, we continued. It wasn't such a big change. The new thing was there was a money stream, a money flow, and we had to find the money to pay the bills. That was a new thing.
Great. So you're building the future of continuous learning, which is also what you seem to be doing as a founder in your own company, Continuously Learning. Can you tell us a bit about what you do to stay on top of the new content, since you're helping people be trained for the jobs of the future? How do you continuously learn? Do you watch your own content? Do you help your employees train with that content? What is your philosophy about learning individually?
Do we learn?
How do you learn?
So one funny thing, so it's been 12 years as a company, almost 20 years as a project. And each year, I think about what happened for the last year, and I'm impressed by everything that I've learned. And it has happened every year since 2007, actually. So you think that at some point you reach a point that you don't learn anything, and that's totally not the case. You continuously learn. So personally, I feel blessed because I learn a lot. And these past 6 months, for instance, I've learned much more than I ever thought. So it's a learning journey for everyone in the company, for myself. And the thing is, as the company grows, you have to stay in line with the company growth. You know, if the company learns and becomes bigger and more complex, every employee and you as a founder have to catch up with the company. It's almost like if the company was an animal and you have to run to catch it. It's a bit like that. So the thing is, it's hard. Because when your company goes fast, you have to run fast. And you think it's a marathon, but it's even longer than a marathon. For me, it's been more than a marathon, actually. So you have to learn all the time. So, for instance, you have to learn the finance, accounting, product management, development, business, how to sell. I didn't know how to sell, and I ended up selling the first contract of the company to my teacher.
How did you learn how to sell?
I didn't. I just went with a printed paper of the website, so the site du zéro at the time, and I put a box saying your ad here. You know, you can put your ad here. And I went to see my communication teachers, which was the head of communication at my school, and I told him, well, for 10,000 euros, you could have your ad here for a month. And my teacher looked at me like, yeah, goodbye, thank you. So he didn't know the website existed. He didn't know it was quite famous even at the time. So I just tried, you know. Sometimes you don't know how to do things, so you just do them. And you fail. I failed. But at least you learn. When you fail, you learn. When you fail, you learn. So that's what happened. I got rejected, quite abruptly, I would say. And then that's one of the values of the company. I persisted. I came again, like a week later, with a better argument. And I went to see the teacher again, and I said, I really think you should think about it, because a lot of developers are learning on le site du zéro, and they might want to come to the school. So if you put your ad here, you get more students. And then he thought about it and ended up buying the ad. So it was the very first contract of the company, and I'm totally not a salesperson, but I just had to do it. You know, I had to sell. So I did it.
So you would say that most of the learnings you've had over the last years are contextual. So it's because of what you had to do, or is it that you also impose learning time on yourself as your students might?
Okay. I do both, but most of what I learn is from experience, contextual, like this experience. But I also spend a lot of time learning, sometimes because it just doesn't happen in the company, for instance. So these days I'm learning accounting. I have to learn accounting. I don't have to, but I want to. I want to understand better accounting. So I have this very dull book about accounting that I'm trying to read these days. And I'm also learning English, so I'm taking English lessons every week, trying to improve as a speaker in English. So I'm taking 1 or 2 hours every week of English lessons, finance lessons, management lessons, communication and management. It's really useful. More like coaching. I had some mentoring and coaching myself. It's been, well, if I have one advice for today, just one to remember, find a mentor. Someone who has been there.
How do you find a mentor?
So ask here, for instance. I'm sure you'll find mentors.
You have to ask people to be a mentor?
Yeah, they won't come to you.
Yeah. No, I mean, you have to ask them explicitly, or do you just create a...
I think it doesn't have to be a contract, but you have to ask. Can you be my mentor? I'm mentoring a few people myself, because I think it's the greatest idea. It's super useful for the people. And I had a mentor before, and it was like day and night for me. So best advice I could give is get a mentor. At that time, we found our mentor at something called the IME, Institut du Mentorat Entrepreneurial, which is something that exists in France. And we got lucky because we found a great mentor. But it was the single best experience for learning that I could advise for. And to sum it up, I spend half a day to 1 day every week learning on books, on online courses, on OpenClassrooms. I learn on OpenClassrooms as well. And by talking to people, mentors and coaches.
So you actually block out time in your day?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
It's in my agenda.
Okay, great. So now that we know a little bit more about you, let's talk about what it's like to build business in education. So you mentioned that you went through several business models, and EdTech is notoriously difficult industry to make money in. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe the different evolutions of your business model, but also how you know that something is not working, and how you decide what the next step is?
So we had many business models at OpenClassrooms. The first one I told you, it's advertisement. So the courses have always been free. They're still free, by the way, and they will always be. So we found a way to get money. So the first basic way was to put ads, you know. And we found a way to make money out of ads. It wasn't that easy, but we found a way. At first, we tried to have different people sell it for us, and then we internalized the sales people in the company because it was much better quality. And then people were asking us for books. They told us, your courses are on OpenClassrooms, C2 at the time, are really great, but if they existed in books, we would buy them. So we told them, okay, are you sure? Because we're going to print them, it will cost us money, and if you don't buy them, we're going to be pretty screwed, right? And so we did it, and we sold one book. The first was on C, one of my courses, and then it worked really well. We sold, I think, 2,000 books in less than 15 days, and in France at the time, selling 2,000 books in 1 year was considered as a bestseller. So we arrived in 2 weeks, one bestseller. So we were quite lucky, and we created other books. I think we created 20 to 25 books. We became actually a publisher, a book publisher. It was online, and we went offline, not because we wanted to do it, but because people told us, you should do it. So we did it, and it worked quite well. For a while, we sold ads and books, like 50-50. It was our business model. And then, I don't remember when exactly, I would say maybe 2013, 2014, more or less when we rebranded to OpenClassrooms, but it's not exactly related. We decided that we had no future in selling ads and books for 2 different reasons. Ads, because it was getting harder and harder to sell ads online. At first, just a small ad was enough, and then over time, it took us bigger and bigger ads to sell as much. You know, you had to put pop-ups and pop-unders, and we all hate that. I hate that myself. And at some point, we realized that it prevented the people from learning. You know, when you put an ad, you're doing it for the advertiser, not for the learner. So it prevented people from learning, and it was an issue because we were here to help people learn. So that was one problem. And also, people were installing something called AdBlock, pretty new at the time, now pretty standard. And we felt like it was going to turn really south, you know. So we were like, okay, if even ourselves are installing this thing, it's not going to work out. So we decided that we had to stop advertisement, not overnight, but over a period of 2 years. We did that. And we stopped also creating new books. We sold the books to Erol, so another publisher company. And we started something else. So we decided we would start something, a subscription model. But we didn't know what we were going to sell. So terrible advice, don't do it. Because we said that we were exhausted because we were just selling, you know, one book at a time, one ad at a time, and we wanted something more, you know, recurring. But that's not the way you do things. You have to have a proper value. So we started this way, and we put our ebooks unlimited in this subscription. And over time, we added things. We added course certificates. We added offline videos, etc., etc. And it went quite well for a while. So in like 2 years, we had 100% of the business model on ads and books. And we gradually decreased by removing one ad at a time, one book at a time, like that. And we had something at 0% of the revenue, the subscription model, and we try to steer it up so it crosses, you know, in the middle. Also, it's theoretical, but it almost happened like that, so we are pretty lucky. And then it went much higher than it would have ever been if we had just stayed with books and ads.
So, sorry, one of the main reasons that you shifted away from ads is also because it was not aligned with your values, which is you want, aside from the exhaustion from selling one at a time, is that you needed people to experience learning in the way that's aligned with the way you want to teach.
Yeah. So we, at that time, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what was our end goal. That seems stupid, but if you would have asked anyone at OpenClassrooms at that time, what are you trying to do at OpenClassrooms? You would got different answers from different people. Now, if you, I challenge you, you go to see any OpenClassrooms employee, you ask them, what is OpenClassrooms' mission? And they can tell you, is to make education accessible, which is what I always try to do, right? The first thing I created, the first course was to help to make education more accessible. But it took us like from 1999 to 2015 to put that into words, into 3 simple words: make education accessible. So my second advice would be find your company's mission. Not at the very beginning, it's not a problem if you refine it, but at some point you have to make it clear. What's our mission? Everyone should be able to say it in the company, to be aligned, you know, to always steer up in the right direction. It helps you to decide what you have to do and also what you shouldn't do. If you're doing something that prevents you from making education more accessible, you shouldn't do it. It's a mistake. Like putting an ad, it's not making education more accessible. So we try to make the content free, and we try to help people get a job and a diploma for free. So we try really hard doing that. So the last part of the business model, because it's the actual one, the most important one. After a while, we decided that we would add projects on top of courses, and it became pass, learning pass. So one pass equals to a job. You have a pass to become a front-end developer. You have a pass to become a sales representative, a pass to become an HR person, etc., etc. And each one of these paths contains projects that you have to do and courses to help you to do the projects. And at the end of the pass, if you finish the pass, you get a diploma. And this diploma, yes, it's fully recognized. It's completely recognized, bachelor's and master's degree. And you're not alone, you get a mentor, a personal private mentor you see every week via video conference. And this mentor will help you to finish the project and will also evaluate you. It will be recorded and added to your file. And at the end, the jury will look at your file, what you have done, your videos, and will grant you the official diploma.
Amazing. And how did you move from learning different skills to learning different jobs? Is it based on something you observed about the way your students were using OpenClassrooms? How did you, or is it a change in the learning environment because new jobs have don't have actual courses designed for them?
It's a mix of everything, but one thing we did is listen to people. When they told us we would love to have Site du Zéro books, we created Le Livre du Zéro. And when they told us it would be great to have projects to practice more, we created projects. And when they told us Mathieu, it would be nice if you could help us. Well, I literally became a mentor myself, one-on-one with people. I took 1 person, 2 people, 10 people, 20 people, and then over time I was just doing that, 30 hours a week, 30 people. So I became a mentor, and because it took so much of my time, I decided to find new mentors to help me, and grew organically. So it was just by listening to them. And then they told us, well, but you know, it's cool, but I have to go to real school because I won't get any diploma and I won't get a job. So we found a way to get a diploma. At first, by partnering with a school. So they got the diploma of a traditional school, and they still do today. And we also now have our own diploma, also fully recognized in France. And we're doing it abroad, in the UK and in the US.
Cool. Can you tell us a bit about the way that maybe recruiters and employers, perhaps the government, think about certificates and diplomas from online schools? Have the mentalities changed? Do you think it's something that's going to be equally valid? Will it be better for a certain stage of learning? Like, how do you see that integrate? And maybe I'll ask you later, one question at a time.
The first question was, how do they see online learning at the public level?
Yeah, and also recruiters and employers, how do they perceive those diplomas?
These are different people. If you look at the French government, you have K-12, so the first part of your learning journey, and then afterwards, so continuous learning. And these are 2 different things. They are really separated. So you have the Ministry of Education, and you have the Ministry of Labor. Ministère de l'Éducation, Ministère du Travail. And they have different goals, actually. So we've been working mostly with the Ministry of Labor because they grant diplomas for schools after the baccalaureate. And they were super keen in working with us because we were aligned with what they wanted. What does the Ministry of Labor want? Not exactly. Yeah, exactly. They want people to be employed. Well, every politician will tell you the same. They want employment. So everything you do that brings employment, they're pretty happy about it. They don't really care how you do it, even if they do, actually. But the first thing they want to do is to reduce unemployment. And so the way it works in France, these diplomas, is that they grant you a diploma only if you prove that your students will, on the majority, find a job 6 months after they graduate. And they look at what you've done, and if they land a job in what they were supposed to be, then they give you, they grant you the official recognition for 2 or 3 years, or sometimes 5 years. And then you have to renew, of course. And you have to prove every year that your students find a job. So we were pretty aligned because we wanted people to find a job. So it was quite cool. And by looking at the law, actually, nothing told us that we shouldn't be online. Almost nothing, actually. They wanted us to be more and more competency-based and to prove the way the student has learned new competencies. But they don't care about the courses, they don't care about how it's done, actually. They just care about the way you measure competencies, the way you measure employment at the end, and the jury. The jury is super important at the end. You have to have someone from the field and a recruiter to confirm that the people who are at the end of the studies, well, they would work with them. If they wouldn't work with them, then we did a bad job.
Okay. And now you also refund people if they don't find a job?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you tell us
it's
a bit?
Pretty aligned with what we're trying to do, because our goal is to make education accessible, right? So that's long-term mission. It's not going to change. It's something that's set in stone. But you have to have a more specific target for the years to come, for like the 5 or 10 next years. And that's what we call the vision. The vision is how you implement your mission. The vision can change every 5 to 10 years, but the mission doesn't change. And it has to be quite broad. And the vision, actually, for us is to make professional education accessible. So it has to lead to a job. So we decided that if it leads to a job, then it's good. But how do we prove that? We're not going to put ads everywhere and hope that everyone will see that open classrooms or online learning is better, because it's not a proof, you know. Each and every school, you know, they use usually their name because they've been there for a century or 2 centuries sometimes. But what's the value of the learning? What is a good quality of learning? I hope you have some advice for me, because I don't know. Still today, I don't know what's a good learning method. What is a good learning? What's learning supposed to do? How to say? You could argue that learning is to help people find a job. That's true, but at the same time, it's not only to help people find a job. It's to help them become maybe better citizens, maybe to be happy. And that's hard, you know, to measure happiness or being a good citizen. So we decided that we would go for the simplest one, which is employability. Employability is quite easy to measure. You just call the people 6 months after, and you ask them, hey, have you found a job? And if they say yes, +1. If they didn't, then you don't do +1. And that's, so that was the way we saw things. And we told us that, well, if we want to be serious about employability, we have to be financially penalized if we don't bring people to jobs. So from that day, we decided that we would reimburse people if they don't find a job, because it's a kind of a moral thing. We know that if we don't do it in the future, someone is going to come up and try to kill that in some way. So we wanted to put that really at the beginning as much as we could, because this thing is our moral guarantee, I would say. It says we are there to help you find a job. If you don't find a job, fine, we'll reimburse you. And it's a way to advertise the quality of the courses as well.
Yeah, incentives are the most powerful contracts, right? Yeah.
I think that's the most powerful one, because otherwise I could tell you, and I really think Open Classrooms courses are really great, but what's a great courses? What's a great course? I don't know. So you would say, yeah, but I would go to this famous school called Harvard because it's more valuable. And yeah, you might be right. A Harvard diploma is more valuable than an Open Classrooms diploma. But based on what? So what I want to prove is that people find a job, and a good job.
Great.
And also, just to be clear about that, it's about accessibility. So I'm not saying Harvard is not a good school. Honestly, I think it's a great school, but it's limited. You have to pay a lot, so it's not accessible. You have to be rich to go there. And also, it's limited. There are walls, and if you cannot enter these walls, you cannot come. Actually, you have to go to another school. Open Classrooms is designed fully online, so it can scale almost infinitely. We don't have this wall problem of a traditional classroom.
Great. So can you tell us a little bit, based on your current vision, which is to help people find jobs, so educate professionals, future professionals, can you tell us how you think about you versus, physical schools? You started to touch on that with Harvard, and probably that's based on the demographics of your learners. So how do you position yourself today?
Well, at first we didn't position ourselves at all. We just tried to put pass and diplomas and ask people, are you going to come or not? And then over time, we found out that the people who were buying that were mostly job seekers. People who don't have a job and they need to retrain to be ready for another job, If you don't have a job in communication, for instance, because maybe it's hard to find a job in communication, then you can retrain to become a web developer, and we guarantee that. So that's the way it has been designed. And this is why, as of today, maybe 2/3 of the Open Classroom students who pay for a diploma at the end, and their own mentor and the projects, well, 2/3 of them are job seekers. And the rest, people retraining, but they are already in a job, or students, people who are 16 years old, are currently learning how to become a web developer. And some of them have found a way to become a web developer in just 1 year. In 1 year, you can have a Bac+3, a bachelor's degree, at 17 years old. So it's really different. It depends on the people. But mostly job seekers right now.
Okay, and so part of educating job seekers and bringing them into employment is perhaps being very aware of a company-specific context. Do you work with companies, and how do you make sure that the people that you're training are suited not only to be a front-end developer, but to be a front-end developer that would fit into that company? How do you fill in that gap?
So when we design our path, we work with company from the very beginning. Actually, we look for the market, and we don't create a path if it doesn't lead to a job in high demand. So we work with company from the very beginning. We try to understand the competencies they're looking for, and we put them in the path. The projects will prove the competencies that you should have for the job on the market. So 2 examples, we decided not to create a video game developer path because there are no jobs in video game development. Sorry about that. It's really hard to become a video game developer and make a living. But we decided to create a path on payroll management because there are a lot of jobs in payroll management. And we think it's interesting and it's evolving quite fast. So we're not exactly listening what are students looking for. We're listening to companies. What are they looking for? And then we prefer to do that and then to tell people, become a payroll developer, not a payroll manager, sorry, not a video game developer. So it's hard, obviously, but we think it's the right thing to do because that's where the jobs are.
That's where it's more transparent.
Yeah, and then you can have your job guarantee, etc. And one thing we've been doing lately, for the past 6 months or so, we have been pushing hard on apprenticeships, so l'alternance, because we think it's really, really the future. The apprenticeship system has been designed for low qualifications, but right now you can have on OpenClassrooms a data science diploma fully recognized in apprenticeship. So it's a way for us to make education even more accessible and more connected to companies. Why? Because when you become an apprentice, you have not a job at the end of your studies, but from day one. So job guarantee, already done. Also, it's paid for by the company, so you don't have to pay for your studies. Also, you are paid by the company. Also, we are going to be connected with your manager and you're working at the company, and you will bring us feedback that will reintegrate in the courses over time. So it makes a lot of sense for us. So we're starting to have more and more apprentices on OpenClassrooms, and we think we're going to push that even further.
Cool. So this in part answers my next question, which is, I mean, okay, let me do a little survey of the room. Who has already tried to start an online course on OpenClassrooms or not in general? Okay.
Oh.
Who has already failed to complete an online course on any website? Is that honest? Well, congrats to the ones who have 100% success rate. Yeah, so today we see that one of the big challenges in MOOCs and other online courses is that it's really, really hard to complete. When we talked over the phone before, you said for you the completion was not specifically a goal. Can you please explain that for all the entrepreneurs who are trying to educate people around the world?
I think we've been asking the wrong question for a long time about MOOCs, online courses. People complain about the low completion rate of MOOCs. Well, it's quite low, it depends. But it's just something that is easy to fix if you really want to fix it. For instance, if you want to have a 100% completion rate on a course, you just make people pay €1,000 for the course, and you can be pretty sure that they will complete it, but it won't be accessible to everyone. So I'm not seeing courses as an end goal in itself, and I'm not trying to compete on that. Actually, we see it on a more global scale. At OpenClassrooms, the courses are free, And when you want to become a student on OpenClassrooms, so not a member, but the student paid for, and you go on a path for projects, for mentorship, and then a fully recognized diploma, what happens is that the courses are not mandatory. And I see courses as a bibliography, something that can go, see, fully online, or you can go to the library, or you can just see the first chapter of every course. I don't care, because if you complete a course, it doesn't tell me a lot. What tells me a lot is that you have completed a project that proves competencies that you would have used in a company. And the project is your portfolio. At the end of your Open Classroom studies, you already have a portfolio. So if the recruiter tells you, I don't know, these Open Classrooms guys, what are they worth? You can just come with your portfolio and say, hey, that's what I did. I'm already experienced. So I think the value is there in doing the projects and not in doing the courses. We don't look at the figures of course completion rate at all. It's not interesting. I think it's more interesting to see how they complete the projects. And to help them complete the projects and finish the projects, they get a personal mentor. So a personal mentor is someone you see every week online, and they will ask you, hey, what have you done since last week? Are you stuck somewhere? Do you need help? And so, because you have a relationship with someone, you are more keen to complete the projects, because you know someone is waiting for you. And that's a better way for us to see online education.
Thank you. So you said that your mission is to make education accessible to everyone, and you have 120 countries in which your students are present. How do you make sure, with all the different skills and jobs you're training people for, and all the different countries, that these people that grew up in different environments, that have a different way of learning perhaps, that they all fit with your model? How does education scale in that way, depending on, depending on country? Do you localize content? Do your mentors change?
So we personalize a bit the content based on countries. Sometimes in a country a job doesn't exist. For instance, in France, we have something really famous called chef de projet. It doesn't mean anything, but everyone wants to be a chef de projet. And we tried to translate that in English, and then we went to see in the UK and the US, and they don't have that. So it's a bit different, actually. So you have to look at the market first. It's important, and then you adapt to the local market with the mentors. The mentors are your local spokespersons, and they can tell you, for instance, I'm in Algeria, and I'm a front-end developer. I can tell you what is becoming a front-end developer in Algeria. I can share my experience with you, which is very valuable. The mentor is not here to give the course, because the course is already free on OpenClassrooms. They will point you to the right course when you need it. So it's how it's personalized. Two students won't have the same experience. And they will also help you get confident with yourself. It's really important. So they will share their own story, and they will tell you, yes, you can do it. I've been there. It's hard, I know, but sometimes it gets better, etc. So we really think the added value of OpenClassrooms is this mentorship system that you don't get anywhere else, as far as I know.
And who mentors the mentors? How do you train them?
We do. We mentor the mentors internally. So we have a team fully dedicated to finding mentors, training them, congratulating them, paying them. It's a full-time job, actually. We have a team of 7, 8 people working on mentorship. And to become a mentor, they have to complete an OpenClassrooms course called How to Become a Mentor on OpenClassrooms. And once they do that, we use our own product a lot. It's how you know it's working. And then if they pass this course, we start to talk to them, and then they get into a path to become a mentor. It's a new thing, and they get skills, etc. over time. And it's how we train them, and we look at the quality, and when you give them feedback over time also. We look at their videos, how they train people, and we give them feedback to help them improve in becoming mentors. So we take people who are in a job, front-end developers, or data scientists, for instance, and they are not mentors at all, but we prefer to have people from the field and train them to become a mentor than to have, mentors, but they're not from the field, they cannot help you a lot.
Okay, and I'm thinking back to something you said before, which is that in order for your business model to evolve, you listen to the people. And so I'm wondering, how do you actually collect feedback from them? Is a community something that you invest in? How do you voice, what they think, how they feel, what they want?
So we have community managers, of course, but it's more general and today more outside of OpenClassrooms, Twitter, Facebook, etc. We mostly have a big team called the Student Success Team. They're in touch with the students every day, and they're not the mentors. They are people on top of the mentors to guide you through your OpenClassrooms learning journey. And they get a lot of feedback from students, and they learn a lot through that, and they share it to the whole company when it makes sense. So we use Slack, like almost everyone, and we have a Slack channel called Feedback. And when someone hears an interesting feedback, they just copy-paste it, good or bad. And everyone does that at OpenClassrooms. So everyone is always in touch with the students' feedbacks. So that's one thing. And also we do invite students at OpenClassrooms. We have these weekly meetings, short meetings, to align everyone on the company's metrics. And we try every time to have a student or a former student, an alumni, come at OpenClassrooms, share their own story. It's the most powerful pep talk ever for any team. Thank you, OpenClassrooms, you changed my life. Please don't stop what you're doing, etc. So I'm like, the team is motivated now. It's good.
Job done. Okay. So I'm gonna, leave some time for you guys to ask questions, but I have one last one for you. Second glass of water is coming in handy. Cool. So as we have a lot of entrepreneurs in the room, I am wondering if you have any advice that you would like to give them about starting a company in the EdTech market today. It's a pretty broad question.
In EdTech?
In EdTech, specifically.
It's hard to give a good advice specific to EdTech, because I would have an advice for any entrepreneur.
Okay,
like start now, don't wait. It's never going to be better in the future. Fail now, because you will fail anyway. So start now. That's my first advice. And yeah, I told you, get a mentor. It's really useful. You don't have to get someone very famous or whatever, but someone who has already been through your stage, who can see from above. That's what mentors are for. On OpenClassrooms, they are people who can see from above and see, oh, you're here. This is the path you should take. That's what a mentor is. That's called experience, actually. So get a mentor. And for EdTech, I have just one remark, but don't take it as an advice that you should always follow. It's really hard to sell to the French government. To sell to schools, K-12 schools, college, lycée, etc. So you could have a good tool, but selling to the government is really hard unless you're creating paper books, manuels scolaires. They buy them a lot. They have a lot of money for that. They would very much like to stop doing that and have something more digital, but they are, pushed by publishers to continue doing that. So it's really hard to sell to the government. It's really, really hard. Some people succeed, but most of the time they don't. But I'm not telling you you will never succeed in doing that, because people told me that all the time, yeah. And I proved them wrong. But it's quite hard in France. In the US, maybe. In the US, it's more, it's easier. But in France, it's a nightmare. Also, one thing I really think about education, it's a very complex system. And if you're just creating one tool to solve one issue in education, I think that's not enough. For instance, you're creating a tool for the classroom, but you're not in charge of the classroom in itself, of the teacher. So the experience might not be as good as you think. So what we have the luck and chance to do at OpenClassrooms is that we handle all the process. That's what makes, honestly, OpenClassrooms quite unique, because we create our own courses. We have a fully dedicated team to that. We have our own diplomas. We have our own platform, tech platform. We have our mentors, etc., etc. So we handle the whole process in its whole complexity. And it took us 20 years to get there. So second thing about education, you're here for the long run. Education doesn't happen or doesn't work in just 1 year or 2 years. Don't hear about everyone telling you about startup things going fast and crazy. In education, I don't believe it's possible. I don't believe it's possible, really. I think you have to be prepared for a marathon, because you are here to train people over time for the next generations. It's not a magic tool that will solve everything.
So good luck to everyone.
Que la famille.